What is up, guys? In today's video, I'm going to be going over several controller Fortnite tips that'll hopefully help you play better and get better if you are a controller player in Fortnite Zero Build. As always, if you guys do enjoy this video, find it helpful, informative, interesting, remember to give it a like, subscribe if you'd like to see more, and comment down below what controller you play on. Personally, I use a PS5 aim controller, and I have my own Evolve Jake version. I am sponsored by them. You can use code EvolveJake for a discount. Their link will be in the description below. But they make custom controllers with all like the performance enhancing benefits. Also, if you guys have been watching my channel for a while, this is a video I make every few months or every few seasons just because there typically is always new players coming into Fortnite and consuming Fortnite content. So if you've seen my videos like this before, I'm aware that it's, a repeat, but that's why I remake them. The first thing I'm going to talk about is going to be understanding aim assist, because I feel like this is where a lot of people go wrong. I see a lot of controller players talking about the game, and they'll be like, what is this aim assist? Everybody has aim assist, but I don't have it at all. It's crazy. What aim assist mostly does in Fortnite is going to be it slows down your sensitivity when you're on an opponent. That is the bulk of it. There's very little auto rotation in Fortnite, which is going to be when the game essentially aims for you. There's very little of that. It's mostly just slow down your sensitivity when you're on an opponent. And the reason why this is important is because, like I said, a lot of people expect it to be aiming for them. And then when it's not doing that, they think it's just not working. But it's mostly just slow down. And I feel like if you understand that, then you're going to have a lot more reasonable expectations. And the next thing I'm going to say is to not blame the input method for everything. This is another mistake I see a lot of controller players make, or people when talking about the game. Every time they die, they're blaming keyboard or, looking for reasons why they think that person is on keyboard, and then that's why the person won the fight, because in their mind, keyboard and mouse is vastly superior. And, keyboard and mouse probably does have a higher skill ceiling, but Fortnite has a history of a lot of controller players doing very well, even at the highest end of competitive, not so much within the past year, but the LAN at the end of the year in 2023 was actually won by a controller player, and he's won several FNCS. And I think the gap between controller and keyboard is smaller in Zero Build than in builds, but even in builds at the highest level, we've seen controller players succeed in Fortnite. So every time you lose, it's not because the opponent is on mouse and keyboard. There's times where maybe you lose because your input method, but if that's what you're blaming every single time, that's a mistake that you probably need to address, because if, we all blame things and complain when we die, but if it's every single time, you're probably not taking anything away from those fights that could actually help you improve. One disadvantage of controller when compared to mouse and keyboard is that the analog sticks are not a very precise tool for aiming. It's harder to make those very small, precise adjustments that you need to make. And one way that you can kind of get around this or benefit yourself with this is going to be left stick aiming. This is going to be using your character's movement left and right to make those small left and right adjustments. And this is not just true in Fortnite. Any controller game I've ever seen played multiplayer wise, whether it's Call of Duty, Halo, Battlefield, Rainbow Six Siege, using your movement to aim is a huge aspect of the game. And it's something that you'll see very good controller players do kind of seamlessly and flawlessly, where they combine moving the right stick and the left stick to shift their character's aim properly and make those small adjustments. So if you don't understand what I mean by this, just next time you get in a game, aim down sights and then move your character left to right without moving your right stick, and you'll see that it is moving your aim a bit, and you can kind of use that to make fine adjustments or small adjustments, like I was saying. And just in addition, strafing is important in the game. You don't want to just be standing there like a statue every time you shoot your gun, unless you're behind cover. But especially in close to medium range fights, if you fight someone's just standing there, they're much easier to deal with. So getting in the habit of moving your character not only makes you harder to hit, but getting in the habit of moving your character and aim at the same time and doing so in unison properly, I think is a huge habit to build if you are a controller player. This isn't just controller. I think keyboard and mouse as well will be doing this, but I think on controller it's especially important. Another thing that's really going to help you is if you find a sensitivity that feels good to you. I posted a video about this last week in terms of the mindset you should have when trying to find a new sensitivity. It is very unlikely the default settings are the optimal settings for you, and you could find a sensitivity that feels better for you. I know it's like kind of a daunting task and not something people always want to do. One mistake a lot of players make is they copy somebody's settings that's a, you know, content creator or pro player, and they feel like they have to stay on that because X player does and X player is good. And I feel like copying somebody's settings can be a great starting point, but just feeling like you have to stay there, even when it doesn't feel comfortable to you, is a mistake. So finding a sensitivity that feels good for you is going to go a long way in helping you feel more comfortable. Finding a sensitivity that feels good to hip fire with is especially important in Fortnite because shotguns are a huge part of the game. And in a lot of these shotgun fights, you're going to be hip firing. And if you need to aim down sights every time you're using your shotgun, it is kind of like a cap on how good you can be, I think. Because as I talked about before, you want to be using your movement. And if you fight anybody who's good in this game, they're going to be all over the place with their movement and they're going to be hard to track. And if you need to aim in every single time to hit a shot, you're probably not going to be able to keep up with them. So finding a sensitivity that feels good to you and most importantly feels good to hip fire with is very, very important in this game. Another kind of settings problem to address if you're a controller player, and this is another thing that I think controller is at a kind of not as ideal starting point compared to mouse and keyboard, is that you want to have your thumbs on the analog sticks as long as possible when playing the game, because anytime you have to take your thumb off the right stick to hit like the triangle, circle, X square, AX, BY buttons, you can't be aiming and doing that action. So if you need to take your thumb off the stick to jump, your jump shotting accuracy is probably going to be much worse and you're just going to be much less fluid and comfortable doing this. So you want to take your thumbs off the sticks as little as possible. Fortnite does have completely custom keybinds that you can, you know, customize. So you can maybe put your jump on like L1 or R1 or maybe the analog stick clicks. But what a lot of players do in more modern days is just get a paddled controller. This is going to be a custom controller with paddles on the back that you can map to buttons on the controller. That way you can hit those buttons without taking your thumbs off the analog sticks ever. There also is the claw grip, which is going to be when your index finger is on the triangle, circle, X square buttons at all times. Personally, I play claw and have since like 2008, 2009. But there's not as much of a need to do that anymore. Most people just get a paddled controller. Claw was more popular before paddled controllers became a thing. So what's good is you can customize your binds. What's great is either playing claw or having a paddled controller. Like I said, my code EvolveJake will get you a discount on aim controllers. They'll be linked down in the description below. But there is the free options of playing claw or, you know, customizing your binds in such a way that works for you. Another thing that controller is kind of not as optimal on as in compared to keyboard is going to be how you swap weapons, because with keyboard and mouse, you can have a separate bind for every item slot. And so you can just click that button and go. With controller, you need to either cycle through using the L1, R1, or whatever your binds are, cycle through one item at a time, or you can use the quick weapon setting. And that requires you to hold your swap button and then another button to swap. But what's most important, regardless if you play quick weapon or the regular weapon swapping, is going to be having a consistent inventory setup. And the reason why this is important, it's important on every method, but like the fact that swapping is inefficient on controller means having that consistent setup that you're used to and that you build that muscle memory with is very important. Personally, I like always having my shotgun and my spray weapon next to each other. That way I can shoot my shotgun, click the swap button one time, go to my spray weapon, click the swap weapon back again and go back to my shotgun. And as you guys know, swapping between your pump and spray weapon during the fight to fill kind of the time between pump shots with damage from your spray weapon is an important skill in Fortnite. So just having that muscle memory build up with your weapon swapping is a huge deal. And the best way to do that, I think, is just to have a consistent inventory setup the entire time. Me personally, I do shotgun 1, spray weapon 2, extra weapon if there is one, or this season recently, double mobility is kind of the way. So I put my Void Mask 3, my heals 4, and then my shockwaves or katana slot 5, and that is what's worked best for me. If you really like having the katana to do the kind of swipe and then swap to this AR to spray them, having the katana and the AR next to each other would probably be ideal, but you can also accomplish that, like I said, just by putting it in slot 3 next to the AR. Regardless of what you choose to do, you want things that you use after or around each other to be close to each other in your inventory. That way you can get to them in one button swap. And then you also just want to consistently do this layout as often as possible to build that muscle memory. something that is surprising to me when I make videos on this game is that a lot of people don't understand how to control recoil. And I don't even mean that in a rude way. I just mean like I've been playing shooters for so long that to me it's just second nature. But when you have a gun recoiling, so like when you shoot it, the gun kind of travels up. There isn't much recoil in the game right now, but there has been some guns that have more recoil. But either way, you don't want to just let that gun travel up. You want to pull your analog stick in the direction counter to the recoil. So if I was using an AR that was straight vertical recoil, if you pull your analog stick down slightly when shooting, it'll control most of that recoil, and then your gun will be mostly steady. How much you need to pull down will depend on your sensitivity and the weapon's recoil, but just once you do this and kind of build the habit of it and build that muscle memory, it's a lot easier to control recoil than you would think, especially in Fortnite. A lot of the guns, even the more like high recoil guns in Fortnite, would be kind of like a low recoil weapon in most other games. As far as BR goes, I don't know how ballistic is. And then also centering is going to be a somewhat helpful skill to have. This is going to be when you aim in, like, so you have your hipfire crosshair, and then when you aim in, your dot is going to be basically in the center of that hipfire crosshair. So if you need to make a large adjustment, instead of aiming in the entire time and then just dragging your sight to where it needs to be, unaiming in and then moving to where you need to be with your hipfire and then aiming in again and getting that like snap timing down will allow you to do that a lot faster and a lot more fluidly than someone who, you know, isn't as comfortable with this kind of aspect of the game and is just aiming in the entire time. And this is another skill that you see in pretty much every shooter, like Call of Duty. This is a big deal. Crosshair placement is something else that is universal in every shooter and is going to matter in Fortnite, and it's going to matter for controller. It matters for keyboard as well. But one thing that controller lacks for a lot of people is going to be like fast snap reacting. And so crosshair placement is going to be putting your crosshair in the spot where you have to make the minimal adjustment if a fight does break out. And a lot of times this is just going to be kind of having it center mass, or where an enemy would be center mass. If you're in a house, you know, keeping it where you expect players to be as you're, you know, going through the house. A lot of newer players kind of look at the ground for whatever reason, and most shooters will just be kind of looking slightly down. And if you do that, you have to react more if an enemy does, you know, happen upon you. So just keeping your crosshair more what would be center mass on an opponent, or where you expect enemies to be. That way you have to make a smaller reaction is going to go a long way in making it easier for you to aim. You're not going to have to react as much, and it's going to make everything more faster and more fluid. So if you are one of those people that has, you know, bad crosshair placement where you're constantly looking at the ground, try to make note of that and do better. It's something that's not hard to do. A lot of people kind of do it without thinking, and then once you tell them that this is a thing to worry about, it gets resolved pretty easily, I think. One weird thing about Fortnite is that a lot of the guns have different aim assist values, and being aware of this as a controller player can be really beneficial. Right now in chapter 6, the sentinel pump has like very little to no aim assist, and so if you're using this gun, you probably need to be more careful than if you're using one of the other shotguns. But just in general, knowing which guns have bad aim assist or weaker aim assist may inform your decisions on what you want to use. In chapter 5, that would happen a lot, where like the combat AR I didn't think was as good on controller as keyboard and mouse, or like the striker burst rifle in season 4, same thing, it had like no aim assist, and so it was more of a keyboard gun. I feel like in chapter 6 there's not really weapons that are that drastic. Maybe for some people the sentinel pump would be, but just in general, knowing that certain guns can have different aim assist values or broken or no aim assist may inform your decisions on what you want to use. There's lots of spots on the map where you don't get aim assist. Most notably is going to be bushes. If you're in a bush, you won't have aim assist. And if you're looking at a bush fighting somebody who's in there, you won't have aim assist fighting them. So you may need to kind of keep this in mind if you're going to push into a bush. No, you're not going to have aim assist, so your sensitivity is going to feel a little bit faster, or you just don't want to take that fight in general. I think the biggest problem with losing aim assist in Fortnite is when it catches you off guard. So if you're aware of these situations and kind of taking that informed risk, then, you know, that's on you. But if you're caught off guard by it, I feel like that's when it's going to be really bad. I do not like fighting people in bushes. I will sometimes push a bush. Like if I hit someone like 240 and then they go into a bush, I might push that knowing that I only need 10 HP. But if I did nothing to them, I am way less likely to like push into that bush, because it's just an area where my input method doesn't do as good. Some settings that can also help you if you're a controller player is going to be dead zones. This is in, I think, the bottom of the sensitivity section. This is how much you move the analog stick before movement actually registers in game. And the reason why this is a thing, I believe, is because like every controller is a little bit different with like how wear and tear and stick drift happens. And there could be like you have a controller where there's like a little bit of stick drift. So maybe dead zones 15 feels good, but 12 doesn't. You have like a little bit of drift on 12, for example. That's why it's a setting. But either way, because of this, the default values are kind of bad. I think it's like 2020. And kind of putting these down a little bit will make your controller feel a little more reactive and your aim feel like smoother and more fluid, I think. If you've never changed it, it might feel like too fast and too reactive at first, but as you adjust to it, having lower dead zones is ideal. And just as like a general rule, I think you want to have like the lowest dead zones that you can go without getting stick drift. And this is another thing that's prevalent across every controller shooter I've ever seen, is that people like having the lower dead zones, and that's kind of agreed upon to be the better thing in terms of making your aim feel more fluid and not as like slow and sluggish. Vibration is another setting that I think you might as well turn off. This is a controller shaking when you shoot. Just having the game shake when you shoot there's no way it benefits you. I feel like it might not mess you up a lot, but there might be some times where it just messes up your aim. So I would recommend turning vibration off. If you're someone that just hates playing with it off, then sure, have it. It's not like a deal breaker. But again, it's one of those things where like for years, pretty much every serious player and every controller shooter has turned it off. So I think it's just better to. And then the final thing I want to touch on is that if you're playing controller on PC, you actually have weaker aim assist than console players with controller. So the reason why this would matter is if you are someone who's playing on PS5 and you want to switch to PC, I would recommend it. I feel like PC is a better place to play the game. I play controller on PC, but just know when you first switch, you're going to have weaker aim assist, and that might feel a little off. And if you are someone who has recently switched and you're wondering why things feel different, just the way Fortnite decides to try to balance things is that they give console players stronger aim assist than controller on PC. But that is going to be it for this video. As always, if you guys did find this to be helpful, informative, interesting, remember to give it a like, subscribe if you'd like to see more, and I will see you guys in the next one. Thanks for watching.